Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with journalist and author Michael Wolff. Michael, your most recent book is The Fall, the End of Fox News and the Murdoch Dynasty. Welcome. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you. So recent. It's just published today.
Exactly. Well, I love the fact that you start with a quote from two quotes, actually, The Godfather and King Lear. Is Murdoch's that epic a figure in your mind?
Well, in my mind, since I have written his biography, yeah, he's pretty epic. But I think also reasonably in the history of our times, who has commanded more power and influence as long as Rupert Murdoch? I don't think anybody.
Yeah. Well, and I should make a point. Obviously, 92-year-old Murdoch has announced that he stepped down as chair of Fox Corp and News Corp.
So that would actually be incorrect.
Oh, okay.
He has specifically said not that he has stepped down, but has stepped back. Whatever that means.
So you take that to be basically optics?
Hardly even optics. I mean, I think it still looks the same. Murdoch is in charge. Nobody else is in charge. The company exists because of him, in his image. And he is a meddlesome old geezer. So, no, I don't think he's going away. And I don't really think that anything changes.
It's interesting. So what's the genesis of this announcement? Is it the book?
I think probably in part the book, probably a focus. It's finally hard. It's hard to avoid the fact that you're 92. You don't much go out in public anymore because you're 92. Everybody knows, this is the end is near. But actually, I think in Murdoch terms, and remember, Murdoch is he's survived for 70 years in this business, and I think by many kind of ruses along the way, but I think specifically he doesn't want to testify in the Smartmatic case, which is coming up. It's a $2.7 billion case. He testified. Or at least gave his deposition in the Dominion case, and that was a catastrophe. So I think they want to avoid that. Now, I'm not sure that they will, but I think this another hurdle, another potential delay that will bring them at a faster pace to the settlement table.
Well, and Dominion, we should mention Dominion voting systems. You mentioned in the book, he thought that would be maybe a $50 million hit. It ended up being a $787.5 million hit. Do you think that he was instrumental in that decision? I mean, what happened. You think his testimony might have been one of the factors that really pushed it so high?
I think the factor that pushed it, the ultimate factor that pushed it so high was that they didn't settle it. They went on and on and on and on and on, and nobody could make the decision because there was only one decision maker, and that's Rupert, and he didn't make the decision. But yes, at the end on the courthouse steps, certainly a significant issue was Rupert Murdoch going on the witness stand, and he would have been scheduled to be the first witness. And it was in everybody's everybody around him was sure of one thing: it would have been an absolute disaster and a humiliation for a 92-year-old.
Let's remind people a bit, of the importance and primacy of Donald Trump, certainly in stoking or a lot of the success. He obviously wasn't the other factor. Fox was hugely successful when he was coming to office, but key figure, of course, in the fall so far, certainly of Fox, and then in its primacy, I suppose, in the last several years. How do you think about him as a figure right now, in terms, because there are other news outlets obviously that are doing very well.
Donald Trump is a figure. Well, Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States, certainly in large part because of Fox News. Throughout his presidency, Fox benefited hugely from its relationship to Trump. I mean, he became the ratings winner. It became the Trump channel. Not only that, so many Fox people became key parts of the Trump White House. Sean Hannity, I say in the book that Sean Hannity really became, during certain periods, his effective chief of staff. They spoke multiple times a day, and in a curious way, Hannity was the only person that Trump would listen to, because Hannity was on the air. The most important thing for Trump, the most important credential: are you on television? So this was really a symbiotic relationship, and Murdoch, at the same time, Murdoch has always detested Donald Trump. Even when I spent a year interviewing Murdoch for the biography I wrote about him, and one of the things this would come up, not infrequently, because Trump was always a character in the New York Post, but of what a buffoon Murdoch considered him to be. And then when he became the president of the United States, I mean, it was for Rupert Murdoch almost beyond imagination, and in its own way a humiliation that he now had to pay court to Donald Trump in the White House. And January 6th kind of finished that off for him. I mean, he was not going. I mean, he realized at that point that this was, for him, a kind of a legacy issue. And after that, and especially then after the 2022 midterms, he decided, okay, enough is enough. And Ron DeSantis was an effective Trump killer who he would promote. Now, we see the success.
The world
of
has
that.
turned out to be a very different place. I mean, how much has the break in that symbiotic relationship been a factor? I mean, obviously part of the break, we mentioned Dominion voting systems, but Ron DeSantis not on the ascent, Trump is. Do you see that as a factor in how Fox is doing right now, or will do?
Yeah, Fox has a decision to make, whether it, I mean, the Fox audience has become almost synonymous with the Trump base. So therefore, it is, to say the least, an awkward situation, and you might go so far as to say it is an untenable situation for the network to hope that it can prosper without supporting Donald Trump.
Let's focus a bit on the prosperity, because we focus a lot on Murdoch, and you actually do start the book with Roger Ailes, who was this in many ways viewed as the architect of Fox News, who's deceased several years ago. I mean, how much I
actually start the book with Rupert Murdoch's obituary, which I think we should always remember, that everything is now shadowed by the fact that that Rupert Murdoch is going to depart this vale of tears any minute.
And certainly, as will we all, right? And there's nothing like people, and he will just
depart. He will just depart
sooner than those of us who perhaps we hope are not 92. So, but talk a little bit about the other factors that you see as being critical in the fall. I mean, obviously he's an iconic figure. Talk a little bit about the kids. You talk about how this sort of certain lack of disagreement.
When Rupert dies, the entire power that he holds is passed to his 4 oldest children,
right?
And they have to agree on how this goes forward, or at least 3 of them have to agree on how this goes forward.
Elizabeth, James, and Lachlan.
Yeah, and there are four of them with their older sister
Yeah.
Prudence.
Yeah.
Um, and there is, and the four of them are riven by by all kinds of kind of primal enmities, but also profound disagreements over politics and business. So I just absolutely don't see a scenario going forward in which Fox comes out of this in its maintaining its current form. And the possibilities are, I mean, James, Lachlan's brother, James, younger by little more than by less than 2 years, has vowed, he will take this company from his brother, and he will turn it into a force for good. You can consider air quotes around that phrase. And but likewise, their sister Elizabeth, who is, I mean, for my money, the smartest of the bunch and a very accomplished media figure in her own, takes the position, a perfectly reasonable position. This is cable television. Cable television is not going to get more valuable. So why are we holding on? Why don't we get out now? But there is no constituency among the children to support Fox News as a right-wing Trump supporting news channel.
Do you see much of a role? I want to remind people you've covered the media landscape more broadly for many years. When you look at the alternatives that have come up, really in some ways to replace Fox, or certainly to court that audience, how well do you think they are doing in terms of nobody's feeding off the remains?
I think yes. I mean, I think the trend. Fox has been a kind of remarkable monopoly. It has commanded the conservative audience with hardly any challenge. I think that we are beginning to see a natural fragmentation of that. As mainstream liberal media has fragmented, I think we'll see that conservative media fragments. First thing, it's a very lucrative space. And secondly, we have now a range of technology options to challenge it at on a relatively economical basis. Plus, we have a lot of personalities out there: Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, who are now suddenly in a position to build their own audiences.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Rogan is technically bankrupt, and Tucker Carlson is a bit minister without portfolio. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the trajectory of Carlson. Obviously, he got a exclusive interview with Donald Trump during the last GOP debates. There's been some swirl around whether DeSantis, kicked his dog. If you want to comment on that, great. Seems like we could dive for hours into that one. But what do you make of his career trajectory? Is he still going to be a strong cultural figure, or is he tied so much to Fox that he's lost his umbilical cord in some ways?
I think this will be an interesting test. It's a test of both Tucker's entrepreneurial will and acumen, and then a test of the general climate out there and forms that might be available to him. Now, I understand, and I don't know, and I've not spoken to Tucker about this, but the word on the street is that he is raising a lot of money, so I think that he certainly has an interesting potential.
Ron DeSantis, what do you make of why he has not resonated? Certainly the last debate, he used a lot of the rhetoric that has been so powerful.
I think it's
base.
Clear. I don't think that this is a mystery to anybody. He's not a compelling. He's not a likable. He's not a he's not a charismatic figure in any way. He's a stiff who's trying to play a role, which it doesn't seem very believable. It's interesting that Murdoch would always say, Ron DeSantis isn't. He would say he's not a Trumper, and then he would say he's a professional, and then he would say the worst thing you could say, he's a Jeb Bush Republican. So I think that comes through to people. I don't think anyone sees Ron DeSantis as the real thing.
Do you think Rupert Murdoch is a good judge of character?
Sometimes, like all of us, he has been a good judge of character, and he's been a terrible judge of character. Actually, throughout his career, he's kind of had, developed great crushes on people, and then soured on them. Not to mention, we could go into his romantic choices.
Yeah, that's for another day, perhaps, because I think what's really intriguing to me right now, this is in some ways a continuation of a body of work you've built that also starts with, 3 very powerful books that you wrote about Donald Trump, starting with, Fire and Fury, Siege, Landslide. Since I see them as so intertwined, how have you seen the rhetoric change? I mean, to a lot of people, it's curious that after all we've been through, Donald Trump is now the leading candidate once again to lead the Republicans.
Well, I think the rhetoric has only escalated and gotten more extreme and more practiced. I mean, it's as though everyone is inhabiting a role which they become more and more comfortable in and adept at, and cease to recognize that reality might be different from the role that they are playing, and that's Donald Trump. It's figures. It's Tucker Carlson, certainly. It's probably less Rupert Murdoch, but I think the public figures who are ascendant at this point have learned their roles, and they're incredibly good at them and even compelling in them.
What you talked with the liberal mainstream media. You've been a part of it. I know you've also been an entrepreneur and wrote about that. But the past few years, you've been very much immersed in Fox, Trump, etc. What impact has that had on you and your mindset, if at all?
Well, I mean, these are my stories. This is my story. I mean, it's essentially, this is the story I see, the story of our time. We are all involved in this. To a degree, I have been closer because that's what I do for a living. To the degree that it has changed me is to the degree, I suppose, it has changed all of us. This is the world we live in, and you had better come to terms with it in some way, which is what I try to do as a writer.
Do you think we've become more inured to the impact of Donald Trump and Fox and such?
Of course we have. I mean, I think this is an interesting moment in which people have not really come to terms with the fact that, although we see this unfolding every day, I think the ultimate moment in which Donald Trump could become the president of the United States again is something that virtually no one has yet gotten their heads around.
Who would you be keeping your eye on? You've been part of this, ongoing exercise, as you say, very close to both people in the White House, within Fox, etc. Are there particular figures you would keep your eye on in terms of who Trump would be tapping the next time if he does get to the White House? Because we know Ron DeSantis, not part of the inner circle. Who is at this point?
Yes, I would say Ron is not part of that inner, outer, or any circle. I think it's. I know a variety of people around Trump pretty well at this point, and there are good people around Trump. Um, but one of the things about Trump is that he tends to attract people who say what he wants to hear. And I think that's often the measure of who takes the prime position at any given moment. And that moment is important there. So you could say what's going on now, but that will have really not necessarily have any meaning for months from now. Plus, there's so much that we have to go through here. I mean, the likelihood is that there will be 2 trials. What comes out of that? Trump is very much engaged in a tempestuous relationship with the lawyers around him, and they either become his. He either casts them out or draws them in. So that's going to be something kind of key to watch.
What do you make of Nikki Haley's rise? Does that surprise you?
I don't see much of a rise there.
Okay, so you think
kind of a flat line.
A moment in time, maybe a foreign policy moment in time at the debate, but not necessarily more. Let me step back, because I think that, when you write books, Michael, there's always people that come out and say, I didn't say that, or, one of the examples we cited earlier, this situation where Ron DeSantis was at a barbecue with Tucker Carlson, allegedly pushed or potentially kicked the dog. I can see why this is not the kind of book where you would have it, a lot of footnotes.
Listen, no, I can go to this. I write a different kind of book. I tell a different kind of story. I'm trying to tell a private story, what happens in private, rather than what is curated for public consumption. Most journalistic reality is a negotiated reality.
You don't get a scoop, you negotiate one?
Yeah, you get there's the comms people, the PR people, the lawyers. If you work for a large journalist, a large news institution, they have their agenda. This is the way of the news world, and I'm a kind of lone guy out there who's able to sit in the background, hear what's going on, and then tell the story as I have heard it and as I have seen it. And that's kind of shocking to people, especially the people I'm writing about, who are used to controlling their reality. That is almost by definition what they do. And I kind of slip in the back door and give a version of reality which they don't have control over. So they go crazy and they deny and they seem incredibly wounded by the fact that I might have said something which they did not want to be said or wanted to be said in a different way.
If Fox News disappears, and certainly it's been broken up already, is that a loss in the current media landscape?
A
loss, a loss.
What way?
I suppose there are. Well, we talk about the need for a Village Green, or the state of news in general, and this whole idea of trust in the news. I would say Fox has been an important factor in distrust, in terms of fomenting distrust and also capitalizing on it. Do you think that if, you're talking about the end of Fox News in this book, is that so tragic if it ends? I mean, things come.
No,
and things
I
go.
don't think it's. I don't think it's tragic at all. First thing, there is a natural. There's the natural ebb and flow here of all institutions, and this is an institution which clearly has too much power. Its dominance is corrupting, and we don't even have to go into what its politics are. Just its very dominance is corrupting. So yeah, I think it's a great silver lining that that the end is near.
So let me finish by asking what's on your radar right now that you would put in ours. Obviously, this is a body of work that's come out the fall. People should read it. It is out, as you say. Now they can go and buy it, having heard about it actually for several weeks. What else are you keeping your eye on? Because a lot of the players you write about are in a very different spot, but yet they remain with us. So what intrigues you?
Good question. I think that one of the interesting things about this moment in time is that things stay the same. Things go on. It is going to be a Biden-Trump election again. I think it's one of the frustrating things. There is nothing new. At the same time, this is pretty incredible. And I know that people say, well, it's just going to be a rematch, ho hum. Well, no, rematches are the ultimate fight.
Steve Forbes doesn't think it'll be a rematch, but that's maybe a debate for another day. He thinks it could be Gavin Newsom versus maybe some variation of.
I think all you have to say is that Steve Forbes thinks that. Anyway, you can cut that.
No.
But anyway,
much like you, full transparency, right?
But at any rate, I think that's what everybody's eyes will be on, should be on, will be on, and I think that's certainly what I'm going to be looking at.
Great. The book is The Fall. I look forward to continuing the conversation, Michael, and congratulations.